So thank you again for joining us. My name is Jessica Rockhold, and I'm the Executive Director of the Midwest Center for Holocaust Education. This essay contest has been one of my primary projects for 17 years, so it's near and dear to my heart. And I am thrilled with the way that we were able to wrap up this year's essay contest. I would like to introduce you to our MC for this evening. Rita Sudholter is a member of our second generation. She is a member of our board, and she is the Vice President of Education, which makes her the chair of the White Rose Essay Contest Committee. So I am going to turn this over to Rita.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you all for being here tonight. Welcome to the Midwest Center for Holocaust Education's White Rose Society Essay Contest reception. I'm Rita Sudholter, Vice President of Education on MCHE's Board of Directors and Chair of this year's Contest Committee. Over the past 25 years, the White Rose Student Essay Contest has been an integral part of MCHE's efforts to teach the history and lessons of the Holocaust. Named in memory of German university students, members of the self-proclaimed White Rose who were executed for denouncing policies of the Third Reich, the contest encourages young people to learn and write about the Holocaust from both factual and personal perspectives, and to be vigilant in protecting the rights of all people. We are grateful to Catherine DeBruce, presenting sponsor of this year's contest, as well as members of MCHE's White Rose Membership Society, whose generous financial contributions allow us to offer this project annually. Special thanks also go to the Essay Contest Committee for their heartfelt work, and to the preliminary judges, many of whom volunteer year after year to assist with this project. This year's contest theme, The Holocaust in the East, asked students to use historical documents to research the unique circumstances of Jews living in one of 7 East European countries during the Holocaust. Prior to the award ceremony, and to provide context for the winning essays, I would like now to introduce Jessica Rockhold, Executive Director of the Midwest Center for Holocaust Education, to share a few words about this year's theme.
Thank you, Rita. As she mentioned, this year the theme is the Holocaust in the East, and we asked students to limit their research to 7 specific countries, all of which experienced a unique set of circumstances. So those countries were Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, Belarus, Ukraine, and the Soviet Union. So right off the bat, you can see that the students had a challenge because there are periods of time where those are not sovereign countries. And the Holocaust happens to be one of those moments where many of those countries had been subsumed into the Soviet Union. But the communities that lived in those spaces, and particularly the Jewish communities that lived in those spaces, had unique identities, and they considered themselves to be Belarusian or Ukrainian. And so when we ask students to think about the geography of the Holocaust, we ask them to think about how people are self-identifying as a group, as well as how they might be politically defined. The task before the students was to research the evolution of Nazi policy towards the Jews as it related to the progression of the military war. How did World War II and the conquest of territory impact how the Nazis thought about and treated the Jewish populations in those spaces? So it's an exercise in understanding that where you lived and when the Nazis came to your location had everything to do with how a Jewish person or a Jewish community would experience the Holocaust. Each space was a little bit different, a little bit unique, even though there was an overarching policy governing them. Jews living in these spaces, give me one moment, I'm sorry. Jews living in these spaces came under these policies from 1939 onward. So we're talking about the start of World War II militarily when they invade Poland. And when we say the East, largely we mean east of this yellow line that you see on the map, which was the mark drawn by the Germans and the Soviets through the center of Poland, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which divided Poland when they were invaded in 1939. The Soviets came from the east, the Germans came from the west, and where you lived along that line determined your fate for the next 2 years. For those west of the line in Poland, the policy of ghettoization took effect almost immediately. It was a matter of a reaction to the overwhelming numbers of Jews that lived in this space. Millions of Jews, the largest community in the world, lived in this space. And so the Nazi policy was to confine the Jews, to isolate the Jews, and to allow death by attrition. Problem. May have to proceed without my pictures. I apologize for that. So the Nazi policy of ghettoization proceeds for that period in Poland. But on the opposite side of that line, the Jews are living under Soviet control and are not restricted in the same way until June 1941, when the Soviet Union is then in Germany. At that time, the Germans institute a policy of death by shooting. These are the Einsatzgruppen squads that are moving through the east. They are moving with the front. So again, this is a military operation that is then informing how the Jews are experiencing the Nazi conquest. So as the Einsatzgruppen move through these territories, they go into small communities, big communities, and they kill people in shooting actions. Every town, they move through in a systematic way. This is the experience of most of the Eastern countries. So when we think about Lithuania, it is almost entirely a shooting action country. In June and July of 1941, the Einsatzgruppen moved into that territory. They used local people who were also anti-Semitic to join their numbers. And in large part, those local collaborators conducted the shooting operations. And by that fall, most of the Jews of Lithuania had been killed by bullet. Over the course of 3 years, approximately 90% of Lithuanian Jews were murdered. In Latvia, a very similar story. The Einsatzgruppen was joined not only by Latvian collaborators, but also Lithuanian collaborators. The interesting difference in Lithuania is that the Nazis deported thousands of German and Austrian Jews to the Riga ghetto in 1941. So there were many non-local Jews, Jews of German and Austrian descent, who were murdered in Latvia by Einsatzgruppen. In Estonia, a very similar story, shooting actions with near a 100% kill rate. Estonia was nearly completely, the Jewish community was nearly completely murdered. The few survivors largely escaped to the Soviet Union, and that's how they survived the war. Little further to the east, and I am so sorry you can't see the map because I feel like I need to explain where Belarus is. Belarus is a little bit further to the east, and its biggest city is Minsk. So it is a part of what would become the Ukraine and the Soviet Ukraine later. Again, shooting action territory, by and large, this is a community that was murdered by bullets. The Germans murdered some 800,000 Jews in this space, which is approximately 90% of the local Jewish population. This is also the space where we see the most resistance in terms of partisans. This is a space that is heavily forested. There is swamp territory. And so there was literal, physical, and topographical cover for Jewish people to remove themselves from the cities, go into these places, hide, and then to form active partisan units. So the Soviet Union, in the terms of the Ukraine, the most significant shooting action there, which many of our students discussed, was Babi Yar. Babi Yar is located just outside Kiev, and it was the murder site for the majority of Kiev's Jewish community, where in just 2 days, September 29th and 30th, over 33,000 Jewish people were murdered. It was the third largest mass killing during World War II. So as significant as that is, 33,000 in 2 days, there were actually two with higher kill rates. There is a wonderful organization, again, that many of our students researched and used their resources. Yahad and Unum is an organization that is seeking to document every killing site in Eastern Europe. To date, they have documented 1,761 unique killing sites, and their work continues. If you look at the map of that work, you will find that there is not a speck of ground in Eastern Europe that is not covered with these killing sites. Running concurrently, exactly parallel to this policy of shooting in the East, policy coming from Berlin is also saying, this isn't enough, this isn't going to help us deal with the Jewish community in the West. So at the same time that these shooting actions are happening, decisions are being made to establish 6 killing centers in occupied Poland. Those camps are Auschwitz, Chełmno, Majdanek, and then Treblinka, Sobibor, and Belzec, which constitute what we call the Operation Reinhard camps. In the 11 months from mid-March 1942 to mid-February 1943, 11 months, over half of the victims of the Holocaust were murdered. Those 3 million people are almost exclusively the Polish Jews that were being deported from the ghettos that had been established years earlier. They were largely sent to the Operation Reinhard camps, where they were immediately murdered. Very few of those people were selected for labor. Again, over 90% of Polish Jews were murdered during the Holocaust. So if you think about this in terms of percentages, the East is the deadliest place to be as a Jewish person in this time period. The policies are more extreme. The chances of finding an escape path are fewer. And the Nazis have the cover of war to handle any sort of information that might be coming out. The last thing that our students were asked to do is to consider how the Holocaust is memorialized in each of the countries that they studied. And what we see across Europe is a wide variety of styles of memorialization and different levels of truth. And the students dealt with that beautifully, particularly in the East, as we are looking at former Soviet territories. All of the spaces that we've discussed tonight were liberated by Soviets and then under Soviet occupation for many years. The way that that is memorialized and sometimes obfuscated is important to understanding how those countries deal with the Holocaust today. So I hope that provides you just a little context for what your students learned about. These teachers have done a fantastic job relaying all of this history to them so that they could then bring it in their paper to not only talk about this history, but how it impacted an individual or a family or a small group of Jewish people. So I would like to turn this back over to Rita to move on with our award ceremony.
Thank you, Jessica. Despite the extraordinary circumstances surrounding this year's contest, students submitted 123 entries. Each was read and scored by 3 volunteers during a preliminary round of judging, and the top 10 papers from each division were then evaluated by our blue ribbon panelists, who determined the first, second, and third place winners in each division. Both of these steps are conducted through blind judging. Many thanks to the panel of blue ribbon judges. Dr. Andrew Bergerson, historian and professor of history at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. Dr. Kurt Graham, historian and executive director of the Truman Presidential Library and Museum. Rabbi Joshua Layton, rabbi at the Temple, Congregation B'nai Yehuda, and Rabbinical Association liaison to MCHE. And to Dr. Shelley Klein, Director of Education and historian for the Midwest Center for Holocaust Education. And now it is time to recognize the finalists and their teachers. I will first announce the 8th and 9th grade division finalists according to school groups. Finalists, we would like you to unmute yourselves, looks like you all have, and as your name is called, well, when it's time, please take a moment to say hello so we can all see you. From Aubrey Bend Middle School, John Vitha. And sponsoring teacher, John Holzapfel.
Hello.
From Harmony Middle School, Lillian Flood. And sponsoring teacher, hey Lillian, Michelle Sutton.
Hello.
Hello. Kevin Lee. Kevin.
Hi.
Hey. And sponsoring teacher, Nancy Torgler.
Hello.
Thank you. From Hyman Brand Hebrew Academy, Annie Fingersh.
Hey.
Zach Hardy.
Hey.
And sponsoring teacher are Gina Renee.
Hello.
Hi. From Oxford Middle School, Ella Burvey.
Hi.
And sponsoring teacher Megan Trimble.
Hello.
Hi. Garrett Griffiths.
Hello.
Elise Gross-Dedier. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
Thank you. Josie Gross-Dedier.
Hello.
Hi. Dasha Sandomersky.
Hi.
And hi. And sponsoring teachers Andy Husted. I will now announce the top 3 winners for the 8th, 9th grade division. This year's 3rd place winner in the 8th, 9th grade division is Dasha Sandomersky from Oxford Middle School, sponsoring teacher Andy Husted. You could say something, we could see you. Second place is the 8th, 9th grade division goes to Garrett Griffiths from Oxford Middle School. And his teacher is Andy Husted. You could say something to pop up on the screen.
Hi.
Good job, you guys.
Congratulations. This year's top winner in the 8th, 9th grade division is Josie Gross-Dedier from Oxford Middle School. And her teacher is Andy Husted. We now invite Josie to read her essay.
Okay.
And we're waiting for Josie.
Breaking the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, German killing squads known as Einsatzgruppen moved into Lithuania, murdering masses of Jews along the way. Lithuania's northern location meant that Germany established fewer ghettos. However, they continued to kill Jews using other deadly means. For the Jews in Lithuania, Einsatzgruppen and gassing were a bigger threat. After the German invasion of Lithuania in 1941, Jews in larger cities experienced ghettoization. However, most Lithuanian Jews experienced mass killings and later, gassing. Before Germany invaded Poland starting World War II, it signed a pact with the Soviet Union known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, secretly dividing Poland between the two countries. Lithuanians lived under Soviet rule for approximately 2 years, But then Germany broke the pact and invaded the Soviet Union. Almost overnight, Lithuania fell under German rule, one in which Jews weren't treated equally. Like in Poland, Germany established ghettos immediately after the invasion, but because of Lithuania's northern location, most Lithuanian Jews experienced Einsatzgruppen shooting actions instead. Although ghettos were not the primary solution for killing Jews in Lithuania, Germany did establish a small number post-invasion. It established 4 ghettos: Vilna, Kovno, Sholi, and Savinsk-Sionis. On September 6, 1941, Germany established the Vilna ghetto, and for Jews like Yitzhak Rudashevsky, it meant his family had to pack up their things and leave overnight for their new home. In his diary, Rudashevsky wrote about the confusion and worry Jews in his village experienced when they learned the news. Furthermore, he wrote of groups of Jews that hid together, including his own family, so they wouldn't be discovered and put into ghettos. He recorded every invasion, occupation, repression, and mass murder during his time in the ghettos. He mentioned that after the first few days of ghettoization, Jews became crueler towards one another. Living conditions were miserable, with severe food shortages, outbreaks of disease, and overcrowding. Rudashevsky himself developed a fever from the quick spread of disease, which was a problem within the ghetto. Germany established ghettos in the cities, but for Jews in rural areas, ghettoization wasn't the fear. Jews in rural areas experienced Einsatzgruppen shooting actions. While technically part of the German army, Einsatzgruppen members also consisted of local Lithuanians who assisted the Germans. The responsibility of Einsatzgruppen was to round up and kill masses of Jews, or find and kill the Jews that had broken the laws. While killing the Jews, soldiers either lined up face to face with Jews and shot them, or had them kneel at a ditch where they would fall into a mass grave after being shot. Most soldiers received minimal training, but not all of them knew the right way to shoot and kill quickly. Sometimes killings didn't go as planned, and the soldiers assigned to these jobs became mentally distressed. Nevertheless, shooting actions continued. The killing squads murdered thousands of people within short time periods, some as short as 3 days. An Einsatzgruppen and local Lithuanians in Einsatzkommune 3, led by Karl Jaeger, killed 137,346 Jews within 6 months. Furthermore, none of the Jews killed were work Jews because there were orders for them not to be shot. There were over 1 million victims of the Einsatzgruppen in valleys in and around Lithuania and other Soviet-occupied countries. However, in the end, Nazi high command deemed this extermination method inefficient and a waste of bullets and shifted to its policy. Though shooting was the main method of murder in Lithuania, the Germans made one last effort to exterminate the Jews: gassing. The Nazis first tested gassing as a killing method in Germany on the mentally ill and disabled, and found it to be both effective and efficient. In fact, 70,000 Germans died in that manner. Outside Germany, they experimented with other different types of killing, including injections and explosions, and cremated them afterwards. They determined very quickly that explosives were inefficient because they killed a differing number of people per time, and they had to use multiple explosions to kill all the people. They decided that gassing was more efficient, faster, and saved on more war resources than other previous solutions. First, the Nazis gave gas vans to Einsatzgruppen to murder Jews using carbon monoxide. Soldiers loaded Jews into vans and drove around until they died, ending at pre-dug graves where they placed the body. This process took approximately 15 to 30 minutes. While carbon monoxide worked, there were better gassing options, specifically Zyklon B. The Nazis first tried it at Auschwitz, and it lived up to their standards for both efficiency and effectiveness. As a result, they built permanent gassing facilities at Belzec, Sobibor, and Treblinka to carry out the killings. Gassing was the Nazis' final effort to exterminate the Jews, and in the end, millions died in gas chambers. After the war ended, Lithuania established very few memorials to honor the thousands of Jews murdered, According to the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, there are Holocaust museums that should be put into place in some of the key historical sites in Eastern European countries that are not. It also says that the memorial services that exist should do a better job of honoring the victims. However, there is a day of remembrance and an annual march to honor all the Jews who died in Lithuania. Many students and teachers attend this event to teach and learn about the Holocaust. The country is also trying to establish a museum at the location of the Vilna Ghetto Library. While Lithuania has tried to memorialize its Holocaust victims, there are some political problems that still exist, the largest being denying the involvement of local Lithuanians during the Holocaust. Arūnas Gumulauskas, a member of the Prime Minister Saulis Skvernelis, is Lithuanian Farmers and Greens Union Party, wants to pass a bill saying that local Lithuanians did not take part in the Holocaust because they were a Soviet-occupied territory and therefore were enslaved and not allowed to participate. Rabbi Goldschmidt wants to change that bill, saying that facts are facts and that people cannot change history. Overall, it may be said that memorials are needed to honor the lives of all the Jews that died in the Holocaust. Lithuania's struggles with memorializing the Holocaust illustrate its complicated history caught between the Soviets and the Nazis. Like all other European Jews, Lithuanian Jews experienced the Holocaust in all of its brutality. After the German invasion of Lithuania in 1941, Jews in larger cities experienced ghettoization. However, most Lithuanian Jews experienced mass killings and gassing. By the end of the Holocaust, the Nazis killed approximately 90% of Lithuania's Jews. Rudashevsky experienced the first of these actions, the ghettos, and wrote about the confusion and sadness it brought upon the Jews, which was true of all methods of extermination. The Nazis used 3 different methods to exterminate the Jews, each evolving until they achieved maximum efficiency. It started with ghettos, then moved on to shooting, and finally moved to the final solution, gassing Jews in the millions.
Congratulations, Josie, and to your teacher, Andy Husted. I want to thank you for sharing your learning about the Holocaust and reflecting and applying this knowledge. We are so proud of what you have accomplished. And now we'd like to recognize the finalists in the 10th through 12th grade division. Again, we ask each student and teacher to say something to allow us to see you. From the Barstow School, John Lubianetsky.
Hello.
Sponsoring teacher, Angela Goulden. From Lee Summit High School, Aubrey Badgerow.
Hi.
Josh Raywald, and sponsoring teacher, Christopher Boble.
Hello.
From
Good
Lone
evening.
Jack High School, Isabella Allen.
Hi.
Carly Baker.
Hi.
Lucas Hawes.
Hello.
Hi, Kyle Mackey.
Hi.
Rebecca Roth.
Hi.
Hi, Hunter Stansfield.
Hi.
Hi, and Macy Wright. Sponsoring teachers, Bailey Appleton and Angela Gotsburen. And now the top winners in the 10th, 12th grade division. This year's 3rd place winner is Lucas Hawes from Lone Jack High School. His teachers are Bailey Appleton and Angela Gotsburen. Do y'all say something to pop up on the screen?
Hello.
Way to
go.
go.
Thank you.
Place, 10th through 12th. And the 10th through 12th grade division goes to Kyle Mackey from Lone Jack High School. His teachers are Bailey Appleton and Angela Gotsburen. We now, this year's top winner in the 10th through 12th grade division is Isabella Allen from Lone Jack High School. Her teachers are Bailey Appleton and Angela Gotsburen. And we now invite Isabella to read her essay.
Okay. Clutching her child, Rivka Yoselivska stared blankly into the pit of bodies below her as an SS officer asked who she wanted to shoot first, her or her child. Faced with this choiceless choice, she gave no response, and the officer ripped the crying child from her arms, ending her daughter's life with a single bullet and turning the gun on her. Rivka's nightmare reflects the experience of over 1.5 million Jews who perished as a result of the Einsatzgruppen actions that took place across Eastern Europe. Starting in 1941, these actions sparked the beginning of one of the most violent chapters of the Holocaust as the Nazi regime sought a more efficient solution to the Jewish question. Among the countries impacted by this evolution of Nazi policy, Belarus was one of the many that Jews became trapped in on their fight against the Nazi persecution, with hundreds of thousands dying. Although the suffering of the Jews in Belarus is not as commonly recognized as the persecution that occurred in other areas, their stories are a crucial part of this history that shapes us today and must be remembered. In June 1941, the fate of Jews in Eastern Europe changed when Germany broke the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, beginning an offensive attack on the Soviet Union. Within weeks, groups of SS soldiers called Einsatzgruppen swept the country of Belarus, viciously murdering men, women, and children at gunpoint, taking them to mass killing sites made from ravines, anti-tank ditches, or dug pits by those who about to lay in them. Innocent Jewish families were then lined up on the sides of those ditches and shot, with some of the victims merely wounded, buried alive. Despite the fact that these shootings took the lives of 1.5 million Jews, this way of killing was time-consuming and difficult. Many Einsatzgruppen soldiers suffered psychological tolls, with countless drinking heavily because of their horrific actions, prompting the Nazis to develop a new method of murder. On September 3, 1941, the toxic gas Zyklon B was tested in the labor camp Auschwitz. Camp officer Rudolf Hess described the discovery of the gas as a relief and claimed that it set his mind to rest, because the SS would be saved from these bloodbaths. Murder by gassing at 6 death camps would soon follow for the rest of the European Jews. However, the shootings in the east continued, but their inefficiency led to ghettoization within Belarus. One such populous city was Minsk, situated between two powerful countries, Poland, which was occupied by Germany, and Russia. In late July 1941, the Nazis created the ghetto within Minsk, flooding it with Jews from nearby towns and even other countries. Many of the Jews were put to work in labor factories in and outside of the ghetto. In August 1941, the Nazis conducted mass murders of these ghetto inhabitants, and after liquidating the ghetto, deported the remaining Jews to death camps or killed them in mass graves. Rivka Yoselivska survived a mass shooting in Belarus and shared the horrors she endured during the trial of Adolf Eichmann in Jerusalem. In August 1941, after invading, Nazis dragged Rivka, her family, and other Jews from their homes and forced them into a deep trench outside the village. Many tried to run but were shot as they tried to flee. Rivka witnessed her parents shot in front of her as her dad refused to undress, and her mother pleaded to be shot after her children to spare them the sight of her being killed. The soldiers then asked Rivka who she wanted to be shot first, her or her child. When she could not respond, they took the child and shot her in front of the horrified mother. They grabbed Rivka's hair, turning her around to shoot her as well, but the bullet grazing her temple. She then felt nothing, falling into the pit of bodies. She woke up, nearly suffocated, and recalled, "I rose and I felt bodies pulling at me with their hands, biting at my legs, pulling me down and down. And yet with my last strength, I came up on top of the grave. So many bodies were lying all over, dead people. I wanted to see the end of this stretch of dead bodies, but I could not. It was impossible. They were lying, all dying, suffering, not all of them dead, but their last sufferings." At night, when Rivka finally broke through the surface, she and other survivors, including children, ran towards the forest to escape this grisly nightmare. They were found almost immediately, the Nazis gunning them down, all except for Rivka, who remained undetected. After the Nazis left, Rivka went back to the grave to see that the Nazis had already filled the area with dirt, leaving nothing behind but the blood seeping up from the ground. Rivka tried to dig with her hands to join her family, praying for the grave to open up and swallow her alive. She lay on top of the grave for 3 days and nights when a farmer took pity on her and sheltered her until her health was back. She then joined a group of Jews hiding in the forest where she lived until the Russians found them in 1944. Her story is one of many that should be remembered, not only because of her bravery and courage, but also because she became a witness to this crime against humanity. The suffering of the Jews in Belarus is an important part of history that shapes us today. The terror inflicted by the Nazi Germany spread to Belarus, and ended with over 1.5 million dead from shootings alone in the East. The survivors from these actions carried these monstrous memories and the testimonies for the rest of their lives. It is, however, heartening to think that their experience will not be forgotten in history and will serve as a reminder of the brutal consequences of hatred. When it comes to honoring those who lost their lives in the Holocaust, Belarus is still fighting against hatred. Memorials have been erected across the country, but two of the most moving are the Chitin Memorial Complex and the memorial called the Pit. The memorial in Chitin honors 3 million Belarusians who died in World War II, including the 800,000 Jews. In 1943, the villagers of Chitin were rounded up, forced into a barn, and burned alive. Similar atrocities occurred in 628 villages in Belarus. 186 of these villages consumed by flames were never rebuilt. The memorial has many unique pieces added to it, which symbolize important elements from the village. The Pit is another memorial that exemplifies the horrific struggles Belarusian Jews went through. These memorials are one of many in Belarus, all created to remember and guard against hatred. Sadly, some of these memorials have recently been vandalized, such as the Memorial of the Pit. These actions of vandalization are examples of what we should stand against, and we must learn about the past instead of ignoring it. The horrific crimes that happened to the Jews across Europe should be remembered and taught so that we do not make the same terrible mistakes.
Thank you, Isabella. And I also want to congratulations to you and to your teachers, Bailey Appleton and Angela Gossbjorn. As a second generation survivors whose parents both experienced these atrocities in Eastern Europe, specifically Poland, it's such an honor to meet such talented students and committed educators. You are our future leaders, and we see you as carrying out our mission of countering indifference and intolerance. Congratulations to all the finalists on a job well done. We hope this contest has given you a greater understanding of the personal experiences of Holocaust victims and the obstacles they faced. I want to acknowledge everyone who participated in this year's successful contest: students, teachers, parents, sponsors, the planning committee, and judges. I encourage all of the 8th through 11th grade students here to enter again next year. Later this week, we will post the top essays on the MCHE website. Thank you for being here, and we hope to see you again soon.